this is a hideous disease, and the families and even caretakers that are involved, it's devastating.
55 million people worldwide are living with some form of dementia. That number is expected to increase as the population ages. One of those people is former talk show host Wendy Williams. Her caretakers announced the star has primary progressive aphasia and frontotemporal dementia. Thanks for joining us for this special In the News Now report on dementia. I'm Stephanie Haney. For Williams, her diagnosis came ahead of her new Lifetime docuseries, Where is Wendy Williams? Williams has been mostly out of the spotlight since her show's cancellation in June of 2022, but she returned to TV in February in the two-night broadcast premiere of her docuseries. The series explores her attempt at a comeback through a podcast career, highlighting struggles with alcohol and health issues. In a statement to the Associated Press, Williams expressed, quote, immense gratitude for the love and kind words I have received. She added that she hopes others with her condition might benefit from hearing her story. Aphasia affects a person's ability to communicate. Frontotemporal dementia is an umbrella term for a group of brain disorders. The producers of Williams' docuseries have been criticized for what some are calling exploiting Williams and her condition. Now we hear from the team behind the docuseries with their side of the story.
You like being the center of attention and having people wonder.
I demand. 6 years old. That's all I wanted. The center of attention. 6 years old.
Wendy is one of the most radically honest storytellers, in the history of media. And why would this documentary not echo, that incredible legacy of openness?
I don't know what wealthy is. I don't want to be wealthy. All I wanted to do was be famous.
Well, why can't you access your money right now? That seems really unfair.
I have no idea.
The timeline that the viewer experienced is a little bit different than ours because there was a diagnosis that was announced prior to the airing of the doc. It wasn't the experience of any of us as producers as we went into it.
We did not know at all that she had dementia.
It's no secret that there have been random people around you getting money, getting paid, whatever the case may be.
Stealing money from me.
I'm just trying to figure out your friends that you're saying is your friend that you're also paying.
These filmmakers were embedded with Wendy for over a year and, on and off, and really grew to care about her as a friend. And we no longer wanted to be any kind of an excuse to delay Wendy's medical care.
I still see glimpses of my mom very often. She still has a chance to live a good and healthy life, but she needs to want to live that. But I feel like if you don't slow her down, she's not going to slow down for anybody.
We hope that people can see why we aired it, and produced it, and that the intention is to shine a light on, the difficulties and the secrecies, in these guardianships.
I love you.
So do I.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In the documentary, we learned Williams is in a facility for treatment of frontotemporal dementia. So let's learn more about that diagnosis. Frontotemporal dementia, or FTD, is the most common form of dementia for people under the age of 60. The most common symptoms include uncharacteristic personality changes, apathy, and unexplained struggles with decision-making, movement, speaking, or language comprehension. It's often misdiagnosed. On average, it currently takes a little more than 3 years to get an accurate diagnosis. For more, we turn to our station in Buffalo, where Claudine Ying talked with an expert about this disease.
Can you tell us what this condition is?
Absolutely. So when you hear the word dementia, that's an umbrella term that covers multiple different diseases. There's Alzheimer's, which is the one we think of most often, and then there's also frontotemporal dementia and others. So what Wendy Williams and also Bruce Willis pretty recently were diagnosed with were frontotemporal dementia, and specifically a variation of that where The person has aphasia, which is language loss, loss of the ability to come up with the words that they're looking for, to communicate, and especially for someone like Wendy Williams. I mean, she was a communicator for a living, right. So it's especially heartbreaking.
How common is this form of dementia? Do we see this often? I mean, we hear about it now with Wendy Williams and Bruce Willis, but how common is it?
Not terribly in the grand scheme of things. So under that dementia umbrella, all the people who have any variation, 5 to 10% of them have frontotemporal dementia specifically. Alzheimer's, again, is bigger. That's more like 60% of people. So not terribly common, but certainly not uncommon. I mean, we have a support group here in Western New York for current caregivers facing this disease. So, I mean, there's enough people to fill a support group right here in Western New York. It's here.
You're right about that. In full disclosure, I was just talking with a dear friend today whose parent is dealing with Alzheimer's. And so people who have to deal with this in their families, they do want to know, are there any options? What can be done?
Yeah.
What do you do? Is there anything that can be done?
So with Alzheimer's, there are more options than there are with frontotemporal dementia. Unfortunately, because that's a less common disease, it's lagging behind in terms of research dollars. Alzheimer's, thankfully, there have been a lot of really great scientific breakthroughs in recent years, new forms of treatment, easier ways to diagnose and detect it. Frontotemporal dementia is still lagging behind. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. So you go to the doctor, and if they rule everything else out, they send you for a long neuropsychological eval where you answer a whole bunch of questions, and based on how you do, they can pinpoint, yep, it looks like this part of the brain is what's affected, and they'll diagnose you with FTD. It's a lengthy process and arduous and challenging for both the person going through it and their loved ones.
You're right about that. We have about maybe 45 seconds. If you can just tell us, what should people look for if they think, you know what, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, we may be dealing with some type of dementia here. What are the signs?
Sure. With Alzheimer's, it's short-term memory loss. Recent events are what's getting lost. Long-term memory may be well intact. Difficulty with doing things they used to be able to do. Yep. So if I was always bad at math, you don't test me on math to find out if I have a problem. It's if I was an amazing cook and suddenly I'm putting sugar instead of salt or mixing up my recipes, that's a warning sign. Confusion with time or place, those are big ones.
All right. Excellent information. We should continue this because it also comes down to age too. We need to know how old people are when they are starting to see these signs.
In 2023, the family of Bruce Willis announced he had been diagnosed with FTD. Earlier in the year, it was revealed that Willis would step away from acting after being diagnosed with aphasia. Kevin Reese has more on his condition.
It often takes someone famous to bring needed attention to something, and for Bruce Willis and his family, that's exactly what his dire diagnosis is doing. Progressive nerve cell loss in the brain's frontal lobes, behavior, personality, social filters begin to deteriorate. Language comprehension can fade too.
Diagnosis of FTD is never good. Is that fair to say? Is it just a matter of degree and time?
So right now there are no treatments for any of the types of frontotemporal dementia, but there are definitely medications that can help with the symptoms that emerge.
The American Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, which now has Bruce Willis on its front page, is a bit more blunt. There are currently no treatments that slow or stop FTD. There is no cure and no way to prevent its onset. Average life expectancy is 7 to 13 years after the start of symptoms.
Although it's not good news, I think there's a way to support them, to have them understand how to make the most of every day and do what they can to try to prevent and delay some of the progression.
Bruce Willis's family, who says his ability to speak was one of the very first symptoms, write today that we know in our hearts that if he could today, he would want to respond by bringing global attention and a connectedness with those who are also dealing with this debilitating disease. And that's exactly what he is doing.
We're very fortunate that we have some of the best investigators and researchers looking at this to try to find better treatments, to understand the underlying causes.
To try to find that treatment, that disease-modifying treatment that's so important.
Treatments and attention that a famous actor and an estimated 60,000 more in the U.S. can only pray come soon. In Dallas, I'm Kevin Reese.
When Willis's family shared his dementia diagnosis on social media, it caught a lot of people's attention. Julie Luck at our South Carolina TV station talked with a woman who shares her connection to this horrible condition.
WNight 330 posted, "My husband had this horrible disease. You are in my thoughts and prayers. I lost him 10 months ago at age 57.
I commend them for coming forward with it, because they have the resources a lot of people don't, and they can step back and quietly endure this. And instead, she has, made it known that she wants the world to know about it. And it's a game changer for all of us.
Wendy Knight is from Arizona. Her husband, Rob Knight, was diagnosed with frontotemporal degeneration, or FTD, in 2019.
Man, I think I ever home. Oh, no. I'm a rocking man.
That was Rob in 2020 at age 55.
He was such a hands-on dad and great husband and coach, and he was in the mortgage business, very friendly, and just, knocked it out of the park on every level. And then this is just to watch the deterioration, devastating. I mean, beyond words,
FTD is known as the cruelest disease you've probably never heard of. Knight hopes Bruce Willis's diagnosis will help raise awareness across the globe.
People need to realize that this is a hideous disease, and the families and even caretakers that are involved, it's devastating. And again, it's just, there's no words to put anything. You can't label this disease because it's just so cruel.
Wendy lost her husband last year.
We donated his brain to Brain Support Network. He had no frontal lobe. Like, you could see in the video how deteriorated it was. So imagine that 3 years later. I mean, his brain was tiny in the front and actually on the temporal lobes as well. So he couldn't even talk at the end. He just made noises for about a year. But of course, COVID was a setback. So we used to go all the time and sing with him. And then when we couldn't see him, then he deteriorated as he didn't have us with him to sing.
Now her heart is with Bruce Willis and his family.
We didn't know what was going on with my husband for years, probably a good 10 years. And so that our journey was really, really rough, as they all are. So my heart just goes out, to the Moores and the Willises for what they're enduring and what they're about to endure, because it gets ugly. My takeaway from all of this with Bruce Willis is that people look at this disease and try and educate themselves. Be aware, it's out there. It's tackling the young, male, female. It is prevalent, and we need to make it known so we can find a treatment and ultimately a cure.
For more information on these conditions, you can visit the aftd.org website. The family of former First Lady Rosalynn Carter shared her diagnosis with dementia in 2023 and died months later. That's leading to many people wondering if dementia is fatal. Christy Diaz sat down with an expert to verify the answer to that question.
Dementia has been in the spotlight since former First Lady Rosalynn Carter announced her own diagnosis back in May. In November, days after announcing she had entered home hospice, Mrs. Carter died. It prompted several questions from viewers about whether dementia is fatal and why. Let's verify. Our sources are the Emory Brain Health Center and Dr. James Law, Vice Chair of the Neurology Department and treating physician at Emory.
Dr. Law, is dementia fatal?
It is fatal. It's an incurable condition.
He says the first thing to understand is what dementia is.
Dementia is not a disease, right? Dementia is just a description of symptoms. And the reason that I say that it is fatal is because the conditions that cause dementia are generally currently incurable.
The most common form of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. The cognitive decline causes loss of memory, loss of reasoning, and the ability to do basic things like drive, manage medications or finances, and eventually bathe, eat, and breathe, all things controlled by the brain. But even as the brain deteriorates, Dr. Law says there's another reason the disease becomes deadly.
in most cases, people don't die of the brain disease itself. Most people with late stage dementia die from things like respiratory illness. And so it's the deterioration of the brain and brain function that causes the individual to not be able to care for themselves physically the way that we normally would, and puts them at greater risk of these secondary complications, which ultimately wind up being the cause of death.
So we can verify, yes, dementia is fatal, in some cases because the brain fails to perform basic functions, but usually because of secondary causes like infection.
Alzheimer's and dementia are conditions that impact the entire family. Caregiving for a loved one with dementia can be trying. Here's a story from our station in Hartford, Connecticut that shows how one woman takes care of her loved one and herself.
My mom's dementia manifests itself typically through something called aphasia, which is really a difficulty with recognizing words or finding the right word. And it is a progressive illness.
Lindsay Fife had a tough year in 2022. She said she lost her father in the summer, right around the same time her mother got her diagnosis. But she said she worked through it.
It's very important to find the joy in the tough days. By,
in part, remembering to care for another person, herself.
It's easy to give and give and give. But you can't give, from an empty well, so to speak.
So, how does she do it? First of all, Lindsay said she gets help from her employer, the Wadsworth Athenaeum, and from the state's Family and Medical Leave Act by taking intermittent time off.
I'm able to spend a guaranteed day a week with my mom, just helping with the things she wants help with or needs help with. And it was also something I was able to use during my father's illness.
She's also found support online.
I'm always listening to YouTube videos. There's so many caregiver support videos, even Instagram channels, YouTube channels that just share really great practical tips and tricks.
And help from Hartford Healthcare's Center for Healthy Aging.
We were able to schedule a visit to my mom's house to just talk through, the things she needs or if, safety in the home while she's living independently.
She also said the Memory Care Center in Wethersfield has been a valuable resource, and she's used all of this help to make those weekly visits with her mom a lot more enjoyable.
I had an art opening a couple weeks back. We went to the opening together, grabbed pizza, to just try to remember that my mom's impairment doesn't define her.
If you or someone you know is struggling with these conditions or caring for someone with them, help is available. You can reach out to an education center at 1-800-438-4380. We hope this special shed light on something that affects so many people and gave you an idea of where you can look to for support. Thanks for watching this special In the News Now. I'm Stephanie Haney.